So, today for my topic, I am going to be covering orangutan socialization. More specifically, within this, I'm going to be covering the differences in ways orangutans are socialized compared to other members of the great ape family and the differences that arise as a result of this. So, starting with all of this, we have to look at what orangutans are. Um, Now, orangutans, like humans, like chimps, like gorillas, um, are all part of the great ape family. So that means already there are going to be a good amount of similarities across the board. Um, One difference, though, with orangutans is they are found exclusively on two Indonesian islands, as you can see right here in this photo. On Borneo and Sumatra, these are the only two places in the world that orangutans are typically going to be found in, unless it's a zoo or a conservation effort. Um, Further, kind of touching back um, on members of the great ape family, they're all social creatures. That being said, orangutans comparatively are going to be a lot more solitary than other members of the great ape families, like gorillas, like chimpanzees, that you might see. They're usually in groups like that. And that's not to say that orangutans aren't ever in groups, but um, sometimes that is not the case. So, kind of to understand why that is, we have to look at probably typical primate socialization. And that's kind of, its socialization is the same kind of across the board. It's a member of any group within a species kind of participating in being a member of its species, which I know sounds reductive, but this means kind of the different ways that they're going to um, interact with other individuals of their species, um, how they're going to interact with a group in a species, um, and even different species altogether are all kind of contributors to what socialization is. Socialization determines a lot of things. Like I said, it can determine personality, determine dynamics in a group, can determine what they might know about themselves. But socialization also is a huge determiner in the fitness of a species and how stable they might be. And for great apes, that is pretty stable. Primates and great apes across the board have a very, very organized um, way of interacting and have very, very kind of strong interaction patterns as a result of the way that they're socialized. Um, Typically with a lot of emphasis on the mother, and lots of importance on the mother and their relationship with her babies, typically. Um, Now, this leads to different phases of socialization. Um, and socialization already, that's something that you're doing until you die from the second you're born. But that still, there are different stages that are very important, especially the first phase of socialization, the reflexive period. Um, that's when, you know, chimpanzees or gorillas or orangutans, then when they're completely dependent on the mother, right? When they need food and they need protection, and the mother provides both of those. Um, and that, that usually stays the case while they're a baby until they start having other needs, um, other areas of stimulation, whether that's sexual or social things that the mother isn't really able to provide. So as these, um, as we get older, as these animals get older, um, different needs of requirement for socialization are gonna start coming into the picture. So looking at the way that these primates are socialized, looking at things like their relationships within groups, things like that. What are we able to see about how that affects them? How are we able to, determine what things like that um, have effect as an adult? And during adulthood, um, primates show high problem solving skills. In fact, they've been shown to be willing to collaborate on issues if it is a problem for both of them. Um, Even if it's not a problem for both of them, if there's imminent danger, um, these animals are able to kind of come together and solve a problem like that. However, unlike humans, great apes, they're not intrinsically motivated for collaboration. If they've found an issue that they're able to solve on their own, they're typically going to solve it on their own. But that's not to say that there's never any collaboration or any any group efforts. Further, within kind of the results of primate socialization is a very, very high tolerance. Now, what I mean by that is a very, very kind of high level of patience and regard, especially with their young. You know, when you have a baby, it's going to need lots of time, lots of attention, take lots of food as well, and that is something that that primates are okay with, and that they've shown patience with, um, as well as kind of an understanding for what it is that's going on. So between all of these things, that's typically kind of results of primate socialization as a result of the way that they're brought up. Now, you might be asking how this is different in orangutans. And orangutans, like I said, they're typically going to be a lot more solitary than other primates. They're not going to have as much need for social interaction. They might not even be in groups, as we're going to touch on later. Um, that's all very, very commonplace. And one kind of attribute, or kind of for this, is the dependency on the mother within orangutans specifically. Now, orangutans are incredibly dependent on their mother. Um, that first phase, the reflexive phase, typically lasts for 2 years within primates, within not within primates, but within orangutans. Um, and suckling, which is breastfeeding, um, can last up until babies are 8 years old. Now, these all these factors kind of paint a different picture for how orangutans are socialized. Yeah. And looking at this, we can further determine, okay, what are the differences in their socialization going to be? And it can be take a lot of different forms. There are very many different things that orangutans do that other primates don't do, things like that. And one particular thing that orangutans are known for is the use of tools. In my first slide, we saw a little gif of one using a tool, and that's not just to be funny. That's something that orangutans, they have the cognitive ability and the skills to use tools. Um, so you can see here, this is a video of them using a stick. Um, and this isn't just for fun. It actually it serves utility largely within in food. They'll use it to gather food, things like that. Um, Further, with kind of differences in orangutans, is that different groups of orangutans are going to show different behaviors across their two islands. Um, and, these differences in behaviors are a result of how they're socialized and their communicative abilities. In fact, there was a study done that showed more social groups of orangutans had a larger kind of repertoire, and more capacity to show different emotions and different social skills than orangutans that are less solitary, showing the very, 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 very wide variation in in orangutans in these groups. Um, so, further touching back on their solitary aspects, we're actually able to look at a very, very interesting distinction that orangutans have as well, and that is group disbursement. Now, typically, primate groups will have something called fission fusion. Basically, what that does, or what that is seeing a group, right? And within this group, they're able to understand we have protection, we're safe, you know. We're able to, and by being together, we're able to have safety and things like that. And that is not something that orangutans have in the same ways. Um, Orangutans actually, they are able to disperse, um, and that is a result of kind of their socialization. They see how their mother provides them for food, and that's one person that's not dependent on a group. So they're able to kind of determine, okay, I can get food on my own. And that happens when there's food shortages pretty often. Orangutans groups will disperse because there's not enough food to go around to feed everyone in the group, everyone, things like that. Um, so, some kind of overall within this study, I was able to look at a lot of things, specifically how orangutans are going to be more solitary compared to other members of the great ape family. They don't have the same need to be in a group. They don't have the same need to do um, anything like that, except save for the mother. Um, that is a very very important connection. Um, the way that bringing up the young puts a focus on the kind of mother and child also is a very very large factor in this solitary nature. And within these solitary skills, they're able to have an array of different, kind of tools. Use it to whether that's using tools or literal tools or figurative tools that allow their chances of survival to go up. And we're also able to see varying levels of communication and things like that. And this is my works cited. Thank you.